I am William Ferrer, also a member of the core group. I would like to introduce these candidates who have been kind and generous with their time to come here and speak with our community. Melissa Cribbins, running for County Commissioner. Bret, Cecil, running for District 1, which is our district, State Representative. And Josh Adamson for City Council, Bandon City Council.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Each of you 4 minutes to just speak about yourselves, and then we were going to proceed with questions. Our group has a number of questions we're going to ask for about the first half of the meeting, and then the second half will be open to audience questions.
And we have those in the baskets?
Yes. Hopefully everyone saw if they wrote their questions out and put it in the basket in the back. Those questions will be asked of the candidates. So I guess we'll begin with.
If I may, I just wanted to an idea we had. To kind of make it easier and timely, if you don't mind, we just allowed ourselves to make a cute little pedal. So if you have 15 minutes, I will say thank you so much. Or snacks is available for you at any time, please. Thank you so much.
Well, we'll let you finish your drink. Melissa, we'll start with Josh. 4 minutes.
My name is Josh Adamson. I'm running for Bandon City Council. I've lived in Bandon for 8 years here with my 2 children. I currently work for the Port of Bandon for 4 years. Before that, I was at an organ overseas sawmill for about 3 years before that. I currently sit on a various amount of boards and committees. Port Commission as an employee, School Board Budget Committee, Bandon Community Youth Center as the secretary, Bandon Chamber of Commerce volunteer for the Cranberry Festival, Greater Bandon Association Board, and soon to be City Council. My goals as a City Councilman are to help increase and expand education and programs and family resources here in Bandon. I know that they're very limited. Increase public safety and awareness. Work towards affordable housing solutions. I know myself as a renter, that's kind of a difficult area. Water quality and facility maintenance here in Bandon is a big issue. I plan on stepping into that and figuring out solutions. And being a voice for the people. There's a lot of people that attend city council meetings that feel like they can get their point across, but they don't get heard or they don't see any actions. I would like to help facilitate that a little bit better so that there are actions being seen. I am new to politics, but I'm not new to local government. Being working for the port, I plan to uphold the city code, abide by the city charter, and engage with residents to make Bandon an inclusive, just, and fair community for all.
Bret, 4 minutes.
Thank you all for giving me this opportunity today. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces here. I got my start, if I can say, being an activist, grassroots activist. I got my start with Indivisible in Port Orford. And I know a lot of you did some activity work out on the highway here in Bandon, maybe yourselves be seen and getting a message out to the public. So that's where I got my start in all of this. And then probably a couple of years later, I had the privilege of being elected to the chair of the Curry County Democrats. So I stepped into a little bit more political role. Even though Indivisible has its political positions in it, I was able to become a little bit more driven about politics and getting a message out. I appreciate Josh's introduction that he gave today. It sounded like he was reading my platform statement. So we're going to be working together, Josh, and Melissa too, on some of these things, because housing, as we know, for all is really, really a big thing. I feel like it's sort of been left on the back burner. We talk a lot about it, but I don't see a lot of action happening with that. Healthcare and just care in general for our families, for our health, women's rights and reproductive health coming up, child care, then mental health care. So I try to look at all this as just people care in general. I want to start elevating people, giving attention to people. So I'm asked quite often, where do I stand on big business and small business? What am I going to do for businesses? I think helping people work at their best, to be their happiest and healthiest, is the way that I can help support local business, especially local business. We don't have employees that can work, employees that can show up for work every day and know that their kids are being well educated and being cared for in the parents' absence. We're not going to get a lot done when it comes to business. So I think that's the best way that I can help support business in the district. And just so that all of you know, this district covers 3 different counties. So it's all of Curry County and southern part of Coos County, which we're in here, and most of western Douglas County. So from about I-5 coming back this direction towards us. So it's a pretty big area. But I've been meeting a lot of people that I think all have a lot of the same concerns. We keep ending up back on housing. I keep seeing people out on the streets that need to have a roof over their head. And one of the things that I'm finding around that is that we're not all so different, but we all have one representative. I'm not finding that my representative has been representing me, I guess I could say, not very well the past few years. I've lived in Port Orford for 5 years and in Oregon for 5 years. This is where I landed when I first came to Oregon. Some very good friends let me stay with them while I got on my feet. And I enjoyed that quite a bit, but I ended up moving from their property into town in Port Orford, and I live in my RV still to this day because I had difficulty finding a place to live. Even before I came to Oregon from California, I was looking for a place to rent. I just was not having any luck. But interesting over the years to discover that my opponent, Mr. Smith, our current representative, lives on my street. His family's lived in Port Orford for years, and apparently I've eaten in his restaurant where he used to work, that his family used to own. He had probably cooked dinner for me at some point in the past before I even lived here. But I didn't meet him until just very recently. And I don't think that's a very good way for a representative to represent his people. So what I'm really looking to do in the next few weeks is to meet people and let them know and pledge to you that I will be representing you as a state representative, and I will be making time and putting forth the effort to come out and see you in your local communities and for you not to have to read about me on a newsletter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it easier for people if I stand or fine if I sit? Anybody care?
Whatever works for you.
Okay, President's such a nice example by standing up, but I'll sit because I feel like we're having a conversation today, and that's really how I would like to do things. I know with a bigger group it's hard. I'm Melissa Cribbins. I actually was raised in Coos County in Coquille and graduated from high school there in 1990. And then, went away to college, got my law degree, and came back because my father was sick and needed us to take care of him. And so, my dad moved in with us and we took care of him. And then we took care of my grandmother-in-law and we took care of my mother-in-law. And my big point to my husband when we moved back, I said, I'll move back, but I want to put down roots because we had been so transient during college, living someplace for a couple of years, just about the time I got a hairdresser and a dentist and all those things. We'd move somewhere else and I'd have to start over. So I love this place. I care about this place. And I would like my children to be able to choose to come back if they want to. And that was the big driver for me in deciding to run for office. I was in-house counsel for the Coquille Indian tribe and had worked for them for about 5 years. And I don't know if anybody remembers, unless you're a county government junkie, but county government was kind of in a mess at that point. We'd had 2 commissioners die in office within a couple of months of each other, and 2 other commissioners were appointed, and the commissioners just couldn't get along. There was a lot of fighting in the meetings. They would refuse to look at each other or speak to each other. And they probably had 100 people in every meeting that were there to complain about the work that the commissioners were doing. One Halloween, everybody wore sheets in to object to how they were being treated. And my friends and I were spending a lot of time saying, somebody should do something. Somebody should run. Somebody should make things better because this isn't how our county government should be operating. And eventually we decided I should run. I don't know how we decided it was me, but I was the one who decided to run. And I really didn't know a lot about county government when I ran. I was a lawyer. I was enjoying being a lawyer. And I learned a lot very quickly because Coos County is one of those counties that doesn't actually have a county administrator. So the 3 commissioners do all the day-to-day administration. And so I have 11 departments that are my direct report, including, mental health and public health and planning and all the administrative departments, the clerk's office, the assessor's office, and the surveyor's office, all of those are mine. And so one of the biggest things that we do as a county government, as your county commissioners, is really oversee the budget, because these departments that have independent elected officials like the clerk's office, the surveyor, the DA, and the sheriff, they run their own departments. All we have control over is the budget and giving them space in the courthouse. I can't go in there and tell them how to manage their employees or how to run their department. It's 100% up to them. As a matter of fact, there's been a lot of talk about the county clerk's office. I will tell you, though, I shouldn't be opining on litigation that's been filed, but it is 100% frivolous. It is the most worthless lawsuits that I've ever seen. And it's just designed to undermine democracy and people's faith in democracy. And I feel like it's a really reckless and irresponsible way for people to behave, because it makes people wonder if their vote counts. And by God, this is America and your vote does count. And it's irresponsible to make people think it doesn't. So that's my soapbox about the clerk's office litigation that's going on right now, which really bothers me just because it just feels like a direct attack on democracy. So I've been a commissioner for 10 years. One of the things that I really enjoy about it is I feel like I bring a different voice to the commission, one that wouldn't necessarily be heard if I wasn't there. I'm the only female. I'm 20 years younger than my closest fellow commissioner in age. And I just really enjoy being there and speaking up for people that I feel like don't have a voice in the most. Thanks.
I'll give Melissa a moment to catch your breath. Shall we start with questions for Josh?
Josh, I'm Jeannie Culp, and I'll be asking questions. The first one I want to ask is, what specific project or policy do you most want to see accomplished when you serve on the Bandon City Council?
I would like to see education and family resources and youth programs. Definitely. As a father, there's been very limited resources coming from Portland, coming into here and seeing what's been available. Bandon Community Youth Center is the only area for youth to go to after school or even for tutoring or mentoring. I would like to see services and programs expanded here in Bandon for youth and families in education.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing Bandon?
Biggest challenge for me would be that I'm new to politics. I'm new to being on the city council. I have gone to a lot of meetings, but I'm unfamiliar with a lot of other issues that have been ongoing, and I hope to kind of dive headfirst in. And it'll be a little bit of a challenge, but I'm willing to take it on. I'm a fast learner. A lot of input on a lot of issues.
In terms of the city of Bandon, what do you think its biggest challenge is?
Affordable housing, definitely. I've been a renter since I lived here. I've gone overnight from paying $700 a month from a rental to $1,600 a month. I know that there are variables that cause that rise in renters, but it's who you know in this town whether you can get into a rental or not. Most people are going to Coos because there's more availability.
At a city council meeting in the year 2020, Mayor Shammerhorn declared she felt the role of the city council was basically to keep the lights on and the streets clean and not be, quote, political, unquote. What do you think is the role of the city council, and what is the role city leaders need to play to serve this community at these current times?
I do understand the need to be not political in the city council because it's a nonpartisan office. It's more to keep Bandon functioning by the city code and by the city charter. But there are many issues that the public and the locals have here that would like to be addressed or would like to be heard and don't get addressed. It's brought forth, and thank you for your time. And that's basically it.
How will you incorporate the viewpoints, perspectives, and unmet needs of underrepresented groups into the work of the city council? And if you could give specific examples.
Can you repeat the question?
How will you incorporate the viewpoints, perspectives, and unmet needs of underrepresented groups into the work of the city council?
Well, that's primarily been a job of mine working with the port, is that I'm kind of the liaison for the public with the farmers market, with our commercial leases. I take everything in and I'm basically facilitating it to my boss and trying to include their questions or concerns to get things handled. So I can take that and put it towards city council to listen to the local residents and be able to bring their issues to city council. I'm only one of 6, so I don't really have a way to get a direct answer immediately, but I can definitely act as the liaison or a stronger liaison from the public to the city council to make sure the issues are met.
Please describe how, in the last 15 years, you and your career have been affected by exposure to diverse people, places, or experience. Please give examples.
I can go even farther than 15 years. I come from Portland, which is a very diverse city. To go into specifics and to get a little personal information out there, my mother is a lesbian. I have grown up in the gay community in Portland. There are various diverse groups out there that we were all involved with, politically and non-politically. I have brought that attitude and personality with me here. I've just not been vocal about getting involved with a lot of groups. This is a great start for me to take this group and help elevate it if I can with my position in city council.
Would you be willing to endorse and support the passing of a DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion resolution for Bandon?
I would be in favor.
And with tools and programs, what tools and programs should the city council of the city of Bandon use to support local residents and work with workforce housing, living wage, and health maintenance issues?
I know that city manager Dan Chandler's kind of been scratching at the surface, trying to figure out solutions to those issues. That would be out of city council's hands mostly. It would be more in Dan's hands, and then he would bring his findings to us, and we would kind of give our opinion based on what we find his findings were.
How do you think property owned by the city of Bandon should be managed by the city for the benefit of its residents and this area?
I believe all of it should be used for open public use. I know that there's a lot of parcels that are going unused up and down the highway and in the park area here. They're underutilized. I would like to see some sort of public recreational use turned out of them. I know that they just recently expanded the disc golf course. I was not really in favor of that. I've seen that they've been taken away from some of the playground structures. I would like to have seen that built up rather than an expansion for the disc golf. But I definitely think we can have more recreational uses around here for the public and for tourists.
Do you feel real estate speculation is a problem in this area? And if so, What do you think the city council can do about it?
I honestly don't think I have an answer for that question. I do know that housing is high, the prices are high. I don't think it's in city council's hands necessarily to figure out how to get that back down. I would like to see it go down. I do know that there are a lot of vacation rental dwellings that are in this town, second homes that are in this town that sit vacant for most of the year and don't provide housing for the residents. I don't know if there's an answer to that, but I would be happy to look into it.
And finally, why are you running? Why do you want to be on the city council? And what do you hope to accomplish in your position?
I'm running for city council because there are a lot of people who I see on social media or from what I hear on the streets that have a lot of issues that don't either have the time or the want to volunteer to help make a difference. I'm choosing to be that person to get on that council to help make that difference. I've recently had a lot of free time, which enabled me to join all of these boards, and I'm really trying to make a difference. Like Melissa said, I made roots here in Bandon, and I'd like to be more involved. I don't want to just be a person walking on the street that doesn't do anything or know anybody, or when I see a problem, just turn a blind eye. I'd like to help those that don't have a voice or that don't want to speak up. I'd like to speak up for them on their behalf and be able to solve a lot of the issues that people are having.
Thank you very much, Josh.
We'll leave Bret for last, and we can ask you, Melissa, what infrastructure has been improved during your term?
Well, roads are always getting improved, of course. And I mean, that's the primary infrastructure that people think of when they think about what the county does. In addition to that, we built a new health and wellness building. I don't know if anybody was ever at the North Bend Annex when that was the public health and mental health building. But unfortunately, it was a really old building. It was an old hospital that the county got for $1 back in the day. And it looked like it if you went inside. You would know that we got it for $1. And we co-located some of the state courts offices there. We built a new health and wellness building, which is actually, I think the location is perfect. It's within walking distance of SWAC and Walmart and Oregon Coast Community Action and the Women's Safety and Resource Center. So it's really, to me, in the area where it should be, because a lot of people do have challenges with transportation in our area. And we built that with existing funds we have that Coos Health and Wellness had saved over the years and held back. And so we did not go to the taxpayers for any money to build that. And it's a beautiful building. And I think it makes people feel more respected when they enter. I mean, that's how I feel. So if you go to a building and it looks shabby and the elevator isn't working, it can make you feel like you're getting second-rate care. Even if the care you get is amazing, you'll still feel like you're not valued when you walk in. You'll feel like, oh, because I don't have private insurance, I'm going here and the county doesn't really care about me. So I love that we've done that. And then in addition to that, the Whiskey Run mountain biking trails, were something that I fought hard for when I first started as a commissioner and have worked to get grants for. We've gotten about $1.2 million in grants to build that 32 miles of mountain biking trails. And the plus side about, sorry, just to jump back to the Coos Health and Wellness really quick, because I'm excited about this. The plus side is that we sold the property to the city of North Bend for a relatively low amount because they're going to have to pay a lot to clean it up. But they're planning on putting senior housing there.
Yay.
So it'll be great.
Thank you. What actions did you take to get Coos County off the state's watch list for potential bankruptcy?
Yeah, so that was an interesting one. Part of it is every year, since I've become commissioner, one of the things that I've insisted on is every year we basically do a zero-based budget. We go back to the beginning. Nobody gets to just take their budget and add 10% onto everything in order to get their budget through. Because we found that some departments maybe had a little looser grasp on exactly how many funds they were getting. If you go to a county budget meeting, we go through the budget once with our departments, and then we go through the budget as a board of commissioners with all the departments again. And then we bring in the budget committee and we go through the budget again. And so our budget process takes about 10 full days in total as you go through it. But it's made a big difference, I think, in accountability and in making sure that we know where every dime goes. In addition to that, we've really made an effort to find additional sources of funding. We've expanded the county forest by 3,000 acres because we harvest the forest on a sustainable rotation, and then that goes into a 5-year balanced revenue source, and that contributes to the county's budget. And we also have done some creative things like when we passed a transient lodging tax in Charleston at the request of the merchants. There'll be a small amount for the county's budget on that, but the bigger one was we have a partnership with Bandon Dunes where they have a public safety fee on their hotel stays rather than pass a countywide lodging tax, and that money is passed back over to the county to help pay for public safety. That contributes about $700,000 a year to the county's public safety budget, which is significant. And so doing things like that, we were really able to balance the budget and get Coos County in a much better financial place than it was when I took over as commissioner.
What specific funding sources did you find to keep businesses alive and vibrant?
During COVID specifically, or just period?
Period.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I've done as commissioner, I serve on a lot of boards. When you're commissioner, people want you to serve on a lot of different things. It's not really because they like you, but it's because they need to have a commissioner on their board. But I am the chief local elected for the Workforce Investment Board. I also serve on the executive committee of CCD, which is a community financial corporation, which gives SBA loans and also does a lot of loans for businesses. A lot of where our funding comes from is from Business Oregon through the community development block grants that are meant to help businesses. During COVID, we were very active on getting those. The county has to be the applicant, or the city of Coos Bay or North Bend is how it worked out. So we sat down with the city of Coos Bay and North Bend and said, there's all this funding out there. How about we partner? You know, we'll take this CDBG grant because the reporting requirements are really intensive with those. And so you don't want to overwhelm your finance department because then they don't speak to you anymore. And so we took one, Coos Bay took one, and North Bend took another. And we agreed that all of them would be countywide, you know, regardless of which of us applied. And so we did that, and then we, you know, partnered with either CCD or ORCA to get those funds out to businesses. Or in the case of North Bend, they got funding to help people with their back utility bills and back rent, and they partnered with ORCA to do that. But really, it's just so much of it is realized that like in this area, we can't afford to be in silos. We have to work together. We work with the city of Bandon all the time on things. We work with Curry County all the time on things. Partnering, we have a housing needs coordinator that works for Curry County and for Coos County because we realize that the commute shed runs all the way down, you know, well into Curry County for people that are living in Curry County, working in Coos County, or, you know, one of our previous attorneys got a job with Curry County and he had to remain in Bandon because he never could find a place to rent in Gold Beach and drove back and forth every day. So just realize that those are the realities that are facing people, and they depend on their governments to work together and try to figure out how to make that easier.
What have you done to encourage the existing businesses to grow and to stay in Coos County?
Yeah, that's a great question. As a commissioner, I've really made an effort to reach out to businesses, especially during COVID, when so many businesses were really hurting, to make sure they knew about the funds that we had available in order to help them, you know, during that time that they had to have their doors closed. And I've had a lot of businesses say, you know, that made the difference, especially the gyms, the restaurants. There was one gym in Coos Bay that reached out to me and wanted to know if they could, and this was really creative, if they could create learning pods. So kids that were learning online could come there and be in, you know, small groups where they had them isolated. They brought in a teacher that would proctor all the kids. They had a nurse there, and they asked me if I would call the governor's office and see if they could do that since they were shut down as a gym. And so I called the governor's office, and it was fine. And he's actually still doing that with a lot of kids and doing athletic training at the same time. I think it's a brilliant idea. I encouraged other gyms to look at it when we were having the gym shut down. Then, of course, I'm also engaged in the workforce board, making sure that there is workforce training out there. The other thing for businesses that I think we all realize, but I faced it many times in the county, is if you hire somebody and they can't find any place to live, you can't expand your business. And we've had people over and over again tell us, yeah, I'd love to come to work for you. They come down, they look for a place and they can't find anything. I've had attorneys that lived in the City Center Motel in Coos Bay, which is that one like across from Fred Meyer, that lived there until they could find a place to rent. We've had other employees that lived out at Bassadorf Beach in their van until they could find a place to move into. And these aren't people that are making $30,000 a year. These are people that are making $65,000, $70,000 a year and just simply can't find a place. You know, I saw your handout over there and I had heard that number recently myself, that 49% of people who live in Coos County are rent burdened. That's crazy.
I'm sorry.
49% of people who live in Coos County are rent burdened, severely rent burdened. And that's a crazy number. I mean, I don't know how people can make ends meet if they're trying, if their rent is going up all the time and they're just trying to figure out how to get it.
What other sources of income did you find or have you found to fund government services?
You know, funding government services is always interesting. There's plenty of money out there for infrastructure, and we all know that. You see money for infrastructure. There's no money to keep staffing going. And the majority of our budget really does go to staffing. So we try to be creative on finding funding for those things, you know, that that are one-time expenditures. And one of the things that I've been adamant about as a commissioner is we got these ARP funds. And I said, you know, we're not going to use them for anything that's a recurring expense, because otherwise what will happen is we'll create that program and then we'll have to cut it. So we've really worked to try to streamline some of the services we give. We use ARP funds to scan all of the planning documents and get them online to make things easier for people to, if they're looking for a document from planning for something that they filed. The county is taking over building codes, which I think will improve service in the long run. It's improving service now, but I mean, what we need is for people to be able to build things in our communities, to be able to locate their businesses here, to be able to prosper. And in the end, that brings up the county's tax base and the city's tax base. And that allows us to run government more smoothly because there's more revenue there. Obviously, I already mentioned that we increased the size of the county forest, which will improve income for the county. What most people don't realize is the county's budget is $125 million, roughly. Of that, $25 million is general fund, and of that, $5 million comes from property taxes. So it really is a small part of our budget. The rest is just those funds that we cobble together, like the money that Bandon Dunes pays into public safety, like the money that our forest contributes, which is another $5 million a year. The forest contributes almost as much as the property taxes. So it's always a patchwork trying to pull those funds together. Marijuana taxes didn't bring in nearly as much as everybody thought. Frankly.
Thank you. What new businesses have you attracted that have come into Coos County?
You know, the mountain biking trails, I think, are really interesting because they have spawned a crop of new businesses on their own. And many of them are very much small businesses. You know, there's a person who rents mountain bikes now. And you know, if you call them, if you're from out of town or whatever, they can meet you out there with bikes so you can ride your mountain bike that they bring to you. There are guides for the mountain biking services. There's also, you know, people that are doing shuttles. So if you want to leave your car out there. So I think that's interesting. You know, you create something because it's not government's job to create jobs, right? We say that all the time. You know, government is meant to provide services, but as far as economic development goes, you know, we can set the table, we can provide the opportunity, but we really want small businesses to come in and prosper. We want people to see this as a place where they can come and open their business and have their American dream. And so Coos County really does exercise all the economic development tools that are available to us. And I see what I think is going to be successful for Coos County, which is a couple of things. Number one, we need to expand broadband infrastructure because people discovered during the pandemic that they didn't have to be tied to a place and that they could go somewhere else and live and work at the same job that they already had. Bend has seen a huge growth in this. And we're seeing it too. People are, you know, moving to the area, but they can't do it if they don't have good broadband. That's a big thing that needs to be invested in. And there's a lot of broadband funding out there right now we're currently investigating that, looking into how that makes sense. And we've actually been talking to Curry County about it too, because same thing, we just tend to work across those county lines. And then we also have a lot of small businesses, 1 to 5 employees, restaurants, and limited amount of shopping. Honestly, a lot of people are shopping online these days, but a lot of restaurants and those kind of service businesses that are there because we have the workers that are here that are patronizing those businesses. And I think that's really what Coos County's future lies, is in encouraging those sort of small businesses. We're never, because of our geographic location, we'll always have difficulty attracting large, manufacturing type industries if we would want them at all. So I've really worked to encourage those small and micro enterprises as well.
How will you incorporate the viewpoints, perspectives, and unmet needs of underrepresented groups into your work as county commissioner? And if you could give some examples.
I appreciate that question. That's something I actually, really have worked on since I've been commissioner. And I mentioned that about how I'm 20 years younger than my next, commissioner and the only female. And I remember having an argument in the office one day because I went to the planning department and one of the planners had just come back from maternity leave and she was pumping breast milk at her desk. And I said, and she was in a bullpen environment. So it's all women in the planning department, but still. And I said to her, why are you pumping here at your desk? And she said, well, we don't have any place else for you to pump. And so I went back to my fellow commissioners and said, we need to fix this. We need to have a spot where new mothers can come. And I got pretty much deaf ears on them. Just because it wasn't a problem that they were thinking about. And so, I just insisted and we ended up having a spot. But I think as a female, you see that, whereas, not all men do, especially if they're past the age where their children are young. They're just not thinking about it. And one of the things that I really worked hard on is making sure that our meetings are as available to people as possible. We have them on channel 14, we have them on YouTube, we have them live during the meeting. People can attend virtually, which was always one of my complaints with state legislatures. You have to drive to Salem, speak for your 3 minutes and then drive back. So, 6 hours of driving for 3 minutes to speak, it's a hard investment for anybody from rural. And I realize our meetings are probably not the most convenient time for people, but I have discovered there's no time that's perfect for everybody. But one of the things I am really excited about is we just purchased a new software platform with Coos Bay and North Bend, mostly for the homeless work that we're working on right now. But it's called Zen City. And it will be a platform where we can drive online engagement in a way that's not a social media engagement and allow people to come and weigh in on things that we're doing and initiatives that we have and give us a lot of online feedback. We're rolling that out in the next month. And I think that'll be a good way to make sure that people are engaged that don't want to come to meetings and don't necessarily feel safe on social media expressing their viewpoint. There's a lot of people feel that.
Please describe how in the last 15 years you and your career have been affected by exposure to diverse people, places, and experiences. And
I'll try to talk fast. So in the last 15 years, I've been a county commissioner for 10 years. I worked for the Cocoa Tribe in House before that. That was actually a tremendous opportunity working for the Cocoa to see what it was like to be part of an organization that really was trying to boost an underrepresented minority. If we look at the numbers, we know that Native Americans have, terrible health outcomes. They have more children in foster care than the average white person. They're overrepresented in prison populations. And, the Cocoa were restored in 1989, so they're still a fairly young tribe. And watching them try to address those educational disparities, I represented them in child welfare proceedings. And I can't tell you how many times a judge would say to me, like, that child doesn't look Native American to me. And I would have to explain to the judge that, like, that's really not your role. You don't get to look at this kid and tell me what ethnic minority they are. And just seeing it through that light. Because, it's not my rules. That's not part of what I've ever had to struggle with. But, understanding that for some people, just because it's never happened to me, doesn't mean it's not the reality. And so I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of different groups during the time I was an attorney and during the time of being commissioner. And I don't see my job as telling people what their experience has been, because I don't know. But my job is to make space for other people to talk about their experiences. And that's what I really enjoyed about being a commissioner, is just trying to be that person who makes the space at the table for somebody else to come and talk about what their experiences are and what the impact of some of our policies have been on them. Because while we always feel that our policies are fair to everybody, we don't always understand what the real impact on the ground is.
What do you think about the current state of workforce housing, living wages, and healthcare in the county? And how do county commissioners impact on these issues?
Workforce housing is incredibly difficult for anybody who's trying to find workforce housing. I will applaud Bandon. They're in the process of trying to get that 20 acres right inside of UGB, which will provide workforce housing. I think it's great. I think it's always tricky. They have to make sure that it's done correctly, or what happens is those properties get flipped and they become market rate housing very quickly. And I think housing is definitely an Oregon issue. The last time I was in this room, I was actually at an LCD, Department of Land Conservation Development Commission meeting, where they were down here to talk to us about statewide housing policies and how they were impacting people, in local communities. Housing is a really tricky issue. Every county in the state of Oregon has a housing issue, and everyone has a slightly different one. And so trying to fix it on a statewide level is really challenging. It's really important that we do the work on the local level in order to fix those problems. Coos County took some property back in tax foreclosure, the Inglewood School property. We partnered with the city of Coos to clean it up, and because there was a lot of contamination up there, burned down. And we're now working with Northwest Housing Alternatives to build low-income housing on that property, which I'm super excited about. And then, I'm sorry, you had healthcare, and there was one more.
Healthcare and living wages.
Living wages. The problem with living wages, is that inflation is killing everyone. And as inflation kicks in, people are spending probably 30% more, if not more than that, at the grocery store. That's something that hits every one of us in the pocketbook. We have to get inflation under control. We know that, unfortunately, it's more of a federal policy. At Coos County, we've tried to be fair with our unions and make sure that they're getting a wage increase that keeps their buying power from going backwards right now. But it's a challenge to everybody right now to keep that going. I will say in Oregon, I think I have to credit John Kitzauber with creating the CCOs, the coordinated care organizations, that have really made an effort to try to solve some of the healthcare issues in Oregon. And especially during the pandemic, there were very few people that were left uninsured because you could easily get onto the Oregon Health Plan if you needed it. I actually serve on the Community Advisory Council for the Oregon Health Plan for our local CCO. And I'm also, Coos County bought a share of the CCO when it was first created, because we wanted to make sure that we would be able to have our voice heard. And it's interesting because we have a lot less issues with our CCO than other counties around the state do, because we're actually actively engaged in what they're doing. I'm sure other people here in the area have noticed this. If you have Oregon Health Plan, it's actually easier to get into a physician than it is if you have private insurance. And it's easier to get mental health care than it is if you have private insurance. And that's something we need to figure out, is that access to health care, because there are many, many people that are really waiting a long time to get into the doctor. And we need to do better with that, because we don't want people going outside the area to get their care. It's a long drive, and we want you to have a physician in the place where you're at.
How have you and or the county commissioners worked? You gave us some examples, but with city councils and state reps to directly serve counties like that?
And we work really hard to work with our other cities. It's interesting. I have lunch with the city managers once a month. We just get together and talk about things that are going on, because we want to make sure that we coordinate our efforts you know, the worst thing that can happen is that one of us solves a problem and we solve it by pushing it off into the other cities, right? That's not what we want to do. We don't want to push it off into neighboring counties. So we all try to work really closely together. And we actually meet with city managers from Curry County too when they're available. And it's nice for everybody to talk about, you know, the common issues that we have, because they are common for all of us. And we also tend to work really closely with our state delegation, with the exception of Dallas. I would work with Dallas. I never see him. But we do work with our other representatives, and regardless of, you know, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican in that seat, you know, we have to get things going at the state level, things that will help us move our area forward. You know, we're actually working to try to solve the Lighthouse Beach issue right now, which is a big deal in Coos Bay and North Bend because access has been cut off to the beach. And that kind of goes against everything we think as Oregonians, right? We feel like all beaches should be public, and it really bothers people when access is cut off to a beach. And it's, of course, a public safety issue too. You know, also working on a bill that would help resolve the mental health issue at Bay Area Hospital. We have some ideas. We're working with the hospital to try to move that bill forward and do a pilot project in order to try some more creative ways. You know, the issue with Bay Area Hospital closing down their psychiatric unit, it's something that we're seeing statewide. Some of the bigger hospitals are suing the state, but you know, we would rather see a legislative fix to it to see if we can try to get this fixed next year. Keep it the unit open.
Thank you. And finally, is there a personal project that you hope to accomplish in this cycle?
Yeah, the personal project for me, I had an uncle who was homeless and died on the streets of Virginia. So it's a very personal topic for me. Some people will always choose to be homeless, but we have a big population that actually don't want to be homeless. That, you know, want a place to live, they want self-respect. And Coos County recently, in coordination with Coos Bay and North Bend, we got $1 million from the state for our homeless coordination work. It's intended to coordinate with all the cities in Coos County, not just with Coos Bay and North Bend. They just happen to be partners that were ready to come to the table. We put our name in for the pilot project. It's something that we're just actively starting to really work on. We just got the funding about a month ago. And like I said, signed the contract with Zen City in order to do public engagement. We're currently getting ready to hire a contractor to do the strategic plan and all the community outreach. And it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, along with mental health care, you know, mental health care, housing, regular health care, you know, these things all really go together. And it makes us a stronger and more resilient community where we're not separating people into us and them, which is what I'm seeing right now, which is really upsetting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I'm Nikki, and I have the questions for Bret. Cecil, who's running for Oregon House of Representative in District 1. If you live in the north part of Coos Bay, you don't get to vote for him, but most of us here are really in your catchment area. Right. What questions, what qualifications and experience do you bring to serve in our district, well in the Oregon House of Representatives?
Qualifications as far as work background. I've worked in a lot of different industries, and my main vein that follows through all of them, the commonality tends to be a computer operations background. So I've worked from medical care, administration in a hospital, working as a records clerk and a transcriber, so sitting at a computer. And from there, I was able to move into aerospace and work in technical documents, working with classified documents, so I understand this thing that we have going on in our national discourse right now. And from there, I was able to move further into market and research applications, working with a private company in Hollywood, and we contracted with movie studios to review their movies before they were released to help make them better presentations to the public. So I got my feet wet in a lot of different areas. I also have had an opportunity during my life to be, I was always interested in my own health. And I worked as a personal fitness instructor and a personal trainer. So one of the things that I've learned to do is to listen to individuals' needs and decipher what their requirements are. Sometimes they don't even know their own needs. So it's helped me to understand people on a one-on-one basis so that I can help deliver some of their needs as they present them to me, so they can move forward with their health in their life. I believe that helps me to interact with people on a one-on-one, but I'm finding sitting here listening to our county commissioner, there are lots of levers out there that I'm still learning. And I'll be working with Melissa and Josh too, to make sure that your needs from these local government levels are brought up to the state level so that you can all have your needs met. And I'm going to be your representative.
What policy would you pursue to best assure Oregon's future of equal opportunity for all people?
Well, first, let me say that I'm a gay man, that I've lived more than half of my life as an out gay man. So I've had quite a few opportunities in the different cities where I've lived. I've lived from high-rise cosmopolitan New York City to mid-rise San Francisco to rural Oregon and rural California. I had my own chicken farm and goat ranch when I lived in California. So I see how lots of different people work and live and kind of understand on the ground how to approach those things. And like, I'm in a position to understand those needs in those different ways.
That you might be able to bring forth either in the district or to help businesses or housing create equal opportunity for people.
And I'm going to hit on the housing issue. As Josh mentioned it, Melissa's mentioned it as well. I see that as our biggest thing. And as I mentioned in my introduction, that we can't drive businesses without employees. Well, business owners need a place to live as well. It's not just employees and not just their patrons, but we all need places, safe places to live. And we can't develop more business. We can't develop more schools. We just need to have good places to live. And I think one of the main policies that I'm going to be looking at is housing and how we can quickly get some of that stood up in our local communities. And it's going to come down to the local communities doing that work. So got to look at our local government officials, our electeds, because they're the ones that are face to face with you that are going to be making that happen. And I will be working with them to make sure that we get this stood up. Our healthcare as well. We need buildings in which people can, Melissa mentioned the issue of having a shabby looking place where you can get the best healthcare, but you feel like you're second fiddle to everybody else. If you've got a cruddy little building you've got to come into. So I think it's going to be really important for us, not only for housing, but for our medical care and our mental health care, to have places where people can come and receive those services. And we're in a position right now that I'm not seeing those places pop up. I know the money has come out into the community through Measure 110. And unfortunately, some of our sheriffs don't care for that measure too much, but I warn them often to be careful about pushing back against the voters' desires and to work with your desires about making that happen. So back to that issue, money is coming out of Measure 110, and that's coming out into the counties and into the communities, but we don't have places to spend the money yet. It's really necessary to stand up these clinics and these locations where people are so that they can access those services quickly, easily. So those are going to be things that I look at really closely, policies, and there's going to be procedures behind the policies that have to happen to make sure that we can have our health care and our people care happen as quickly as possible.
Okay, how would you characterize the important differences between yourself and David Wells?
Oh, my plan is to show up. My plan is to meet you where you are. I want to represent you, not just tell you what I think about what you should be doing. So this is a perfect example of what I'm finding really helpful, and something that I enjoy doing is meeting people where they are. I've had an opportunity to make a little trip out to Powers, which I think is a gem that's kind of lost out in the woods. And I did notice there's a nice little housing outbuilt there. It looks fairly recent to me. So I haven't done a lot of background on that yet. But seeing that, I know that we can make these things happen out in our communities. That housing has been an issue for them there apparently, and somebody's made that happen. So I'm going to be looking to Melissa a little bit on the county level to see how we can make that happen in some of our other little towns. Curry County has Agnes, which again is another gem, which is really dependent on tourism, but they don't have places for their staff to live. They're living in the RV park while they're working in the restaurants and the resorts. So I think we can build our local economies there, even in some of these far-flung places. We can build these economies, but again, it's going to come back on our housing availability. People. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, okay, great. What are the important ways current policies by Oregon's House of Representatives impact Bandon? And what do you think needs to be done differently or better?
That's really specific. One of the things I'm finding with the seat as representative, there, as I mentioned, lots of levers that I'm learning that need to be handled and addressed. I'm going to be depending on our local governments to help me understand that even better than what I do. But I am a really curious guy, and I like to tinker things and figure out how they work. As a kid, my dad used to give us his old carburetors when he was working on cars. So you can tear them apart, but you have to put them back together. So I was always curious to know how things work, and I like to take them apart and put them together. I'm very curious to know how these levers work and with whom I could work to make those things happen at the state level. I think a lot of us as individuals living out in our local communities, we don't understand really what the state representative's job is. I'm still learning it at this point, but I'm really willing to get in there and swing the bat for you and make this happen. I just want to be out there and represent you so you know who you can talk to and where to base your complaints and where to base your thank yous when you have them. And I'm looking forward to being elected on November 8th so that I can help represent you and say.
How will you incorporate the viewpoints, perspectives, and unmet needs of underrepresented groups into your work as a House representative? Can you give some specific examples?
Well, specifically, I'll fall in on the gay community. I know it's a very underserved community. In our bigger communities, housing is a huge issue for them. Many of them live with friends and family and neighbors who don't even have their own homes or places to live. They're all quite capable of working in our businesses throughout the district and in all of our towns. But again, back to housing, they need to have a place where they can live and they can develop and flourish as individuals. And I'm willing to make that outreach to other communities. Our local tribes, something I've always had a big interest in. And as our chair of the Curry County Democrats, I've been really careful to not overstep the political bounds there and not step on their feet. But I'm finding that they have some really great ideas as to how to develop housing and business for their own tribes that have been left on the back burner for years, that we've either ignored or just completely pushed aside. And they've managed to come forward within their own communities and build themselves up. I'd like to dip into that a little bit and see if we can turn that out into the rest of our communities and follow their example and develop our businesses and communities, our housing out here in the everyday world.
You're going to love this question. Why are you running and what do you hope to accomplish in your position?
I'm running because I didn't feel like I and we were being very well represented. I know there are lots of things to do in Salem, lots of committees and commissions to work on. Melissa has her hands on a lot of things at the county level, and I know at the state level there are lots of groups that want you to hear their case. They're lobbying us heavily to get their ideas in front of us. That's one of the things I'm going to look at. I'm going to have to pick through those things. Our Oregon Education Association, couple of Planned Parenthood, has already put together some really great meetings for incumbent and up-and-coming candidates. Running for state representatives has been really, really informative. So I'm going to be doing a lot of that, I'm sure, in the next couple of years, paying attention to groups that will have my ear and have specific needs for our communities. So I look forward to doing that.
Please describe how in the last 15 years, I believe you already answered this, okay? You and your career have been affected by exposure to diverse persons, places, or experiences, and provide some examples.
Well, having grown up, if I could call it that, growing up in the gay community, especially in the time that I did through the 80s and especially the early 90s. I worked with and dealt with a lot of people that had health issues. HIV was really a big hitter in my community. It left me lacking a lot of friends and acquaintances that I've made over the years. Just aren't there anymore. A lot of my own partners I've lost to that same disease. To people's needs and having the representation with them. You need my representation in Salem. I need your voices coming to me to let me know what you've got to do. I'm always willing to hear and like figuring out puzzles, like putting things back together once somebody's either taken them apart or have something that needs to be put together. So I'm always curious to find a way to resolve an issue. People bring it to me. That's what I hope to do for all of you.
How do you see that state representatives work with city councils and county commissioners to serve residents of our district? If you've already been touching on that.
Well, I know my own representative, I think I've met twice in virtual meetings, and that's just been in the past year, and once in person at a city, Port Orford, a city planning commission meeting. Then he came there out of his interest for short-term rentals, making sure that those were allowed at the highest rate that they possibly could be, even though the people in the community were not interested in that being the case. He was there to present short-term rentals as a great need for Port Orford. Can you repeat the rest of the question for me?
How do you see yourself as a state representative working with city councils and county commissioners to serve residents?
And again, I'll bring up the point that these are the faces that most of you are going to see. I'll be working more with them, but I do want to make sure I'm out in the community so that you know me as well. And together we will be working to improve our communities, to bring state attention. It's federal money is going to come through the state. That's how it gets down here to a city like Bandon. Bandon doesn't get to call Washington and ask our congressperson or our senator. It's like, we have a need here, send us some money. Sometimes that might happen, not very often. And there is a way that all has to happen. I know I will be working more specifically with people on the county commissioner level, like Melissa, and she definitely will be working with city council people. That's kind of the way things work. So not only will I represent you as individuals, but I'll be representing our city councils and our boards of commissioners at the county level to make sure that your needs are met and upheld.
And will you be returning regularly to the communities in your district?
I'll be really
to
clear on
receive
that.
input from the citizens you represent?
I will be really clear on that. And it is my main issue that I'm running on. Next to campaign finance reform, which thank you all for voting yes on that in 2020 and getting it on the ballot and having it voted for. I'm kind of ashamed to say that we still don't have legislation that controls that. And I know Tina Kotek has told us that she now is pledging to make sure that we put a cap on what people can donate to campaigns. That hasn't been an issue for me because I don't have anybody throwing me thousands of dollars. And I appreciate everybody's contributions they've made in the way of time and money directly in my campaign, but mostly your time getting the word out. I really appreciate that. So I'm just looking forward to getting out and meeting more people and making sure that you're represented in Salem. This representation, I think, is really the biggest thing. I can talk about campaign finance all day long, but if I don't have the office from which to do the work, and I will be pushing Tina Kotek when she's elected governor to make sure that she upholds her pledge and gets that done. Because I think that these campaigns should be met with the people. They should be run by the people, and you have all been helping me run my campaign. Whether you understand it or not, I couldn't do any of this without you. So I really appreciate all that you do and getting the message out into the community. So representation is really my thing. That's what I'm going to continue to do. So with Melissa and with Josh and with our other county commissioners in other counties, Douglas County, I'm still working on that a bit, but I'm a little more familiar with the Curry County commissioners and working in that part of the district. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. We were going to open it up to questions from the audience. We're going to go in the basket for the questions for each candidate that came from the audience.
We're asking Josh questions, so these are for Josh.
Oh, okay.
Also a good time to have some water, some drinks, some snacks. Please take the time.
Josh, one question. Will Farm and C eventually occupy the entire marketplace?
That's a work-related question. And I'm unfamiliar with what their plans are at this point.
And then this one is similar to something that have been asked before, but what will you or are you doing to promote equity and inclusion in our communities?
I plan on working with probably this group the most, because this is the only group that I know of in this area, or maybe even in this county, that is trying to create inclusivity, diversion, or diversity, and this is where I feel my interest lies. So I would like to take these interests from this group and help elevate them within City Council. I know that there's been some previous issues where some members have come before City Council to try and get some things moving, and they felt like they had a wall. I would like to start chipping away at those bricks to help that wall come down.
Thank you. Thank you. Those are all the questions.
Question for Melissa. Basically the same question. What will you or are you doing to promote equity and inclusion in the county?
A great question. You know, a few years ago, when I first became a commissioner, I discovered the county actually didn't have a strategic plan. And so as part of that, it's a good reminder that our strategic plan needs to be updated as well. But as part of that, we did go to all the cities and we took input from everybody who was interested. We moved our meetings around and had meetings in every community to talk about what citizens really wanted from their county government. You know, what do you see, you know, what is your dream for this county? And we came up with a mission statement. And it was a place where all citizens can be happy, healthy, and economically prosper. Was our mission statement for Coos County. And so we refer back to that a lot when we're asking our departments to really look at the services that they're providing and how are you providing those to make sure that they're available to all of our citizens and not just the ones that really know how to navigate the system. Because that's the problem is we don't want people walking away from the county feeling like, I didn't get the services I needed, or, I didn't understand how to navigate the system. And so I wasn't able to participate at the same level of prosperity as other people. So that's really been my commitment as I've been commissioner, is to try to make sure that we're bringing in those voices that aren't being heard otherwise. Could I do better? Always. We can always do better. But that's really been my mission.
There one more?
No.
I
have two.
Can I follow up with Ms. Melissa?
Yeah.
This may be just a little bit more specific, but you actually mentioned one of your answers. Are you working directly with the planning department? And I believe that's for the county, I guess. Is that for the county, or there's a planning department for the city level?
Each city has their own.
Each city has their own.
Yeah, but I work with the Coos County one. I'm their liaison. That's what we refer to it. Each commissioner has liaison relationships, but I'm the liaison to the Coos County Planning Department, and I called it that, but we're actually the Community Development Department now, because as of October 1st, we took over building codes. There's only 2 counties in the state at that time who didn't administer their own building code department, and it was Coos and Umatilla. So we took it over in order to speed up plan review times, because during COVID it was 6 months at the county and 6 weeks in the city of Coos Bay. And so we feel like that's a big impediment to housing. If you're trying to build something and it takes you 6 months to even get the plans reviewed, a lot of people just won't bother.
So what would be the time frame now for putting a new suggestion to the city planning department with an idea for a growing new business? As we reached out with my husband, the very first response to our idea was, no, you can't do that. And then we had to go through the assistant to a director, and we followed up all of the paragraphs we read for planning department for the entire state. And we follow up with everything, and then yet the answer was immediately no, without even like actually going into what we are planning to suggest.
Yeah, I find that that's a challenge, I think, in most planning departments. And so one of the things that I do is if people call me to say I'm not getting a good answer from the planning department, is I reach out to the planning department and I usually facilitate a conversation. And it is hard because they sometimes will get in like that regulatory mindset where they will just give you the answer like no, and they won't explain to you, you can't do that in this area, but you could do this instead. And so you try to get them into more of a problem solving mindset. And it's our planners are terrific. I really care about that department. But it is hard sometimes to get them to realize like it's a really legalistic sort of thing, that framework that they're working in. And they need to be in more of a problem solving framework.
Yes, absolutely. A little bit more open approach to the suggestions from the community would be nice.
A little more customer service.
Yeah, I mean, I was just surprised. The manager personnel was always informed with the details, and the assistant not necessarily. This is a little bit more too in depth, perhaps, in this conversation. But I think very important as people are arriving to this area and trying to start something and actually open workplaces, perhaps as well, and possibly some housing as well alongside. So we want to be heard.
Well, as many of you probably realize, Oregon has a very different land use system than any other state in the nation. The state passes the rules on land use, and then they pass them down to the counties and the cities. But it's really restricted compared to other places. That has its pluses and minuses. Part of what I love about Oregon is Oregon looks like Oregon. And we want it to keep looking like this. We want to avoid that sprawl and people not being able to get to the beaches and all of that. But it comes with trade-offs. And part of that is we do have a very legalistic regulatory land use system. And it's our job, I think, as electeds to try to help people navigate that system and understand exactly how it works and what they can do and what they can't and why. Because I always say, everyone's always in favor of abolishing the land use system until their neighbor wants to build something. And then they're on the phone very quickly.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Bret, can you explain more about your pledge to hold town halls in the district? And what do you hope to achieve through the town halls?
My plan. I heard my opponent in one of our League of Women Voters forums. This was in the Curry County Library, the Curry Library in Gold Beach. It's a really fantastic library like this one. They have some electronic things, new things, some microphones in the ceiling with a camera that keeps track of virtual meetings. So when you speak, it hones in on you. He was really surprised to see that. Somehow during COVID, he found that he couldn't hold meetings because it was too restricted to get together with people. But I've always worked virtually as the chair of Curry County Democrats. I didn't have any other way to communicate with people in my party. So virtual meetings, at least that component of meeting with people is still going to be in place. I would really like to do what we're doing here today, have that virtual component on it, the in-person meetings. I'd really like to get out to. I can't promise that I can get into our little towns, but Agnes and Powers come to mind. Bridge and Remote are great little places I see as I drive through. But I'd like to be able to stop there and have some contacts and ways to pull together the local community and make that contact with them and find out what their needs are. And of course, the commissioners at the county level will have a really good way to tap into that, and I can get more information from them. But I really want to get out and see the people on the ground. It's key to that level.
And then the question that was asked of the other two, what will you do or are you doing to promote equity and inclusion in our communities?
I'd like to expand on that. I don't think I did such a good job on it up until now because I've been watching the time a bit. I'm not wanting to hold you over too much. As the chair of the Curry County Democrats, I also work with the Democratic Party of Oregon, and within the state party, we have a number of caucuses that go anywhere from our Latino caucus to what we call the Stonewall caucus, which is for the gay and lesbian, LGBTQ people that are in the Democratic Party. People of like minds and like ways we just love to get together in our little caucuses. I happen to be a member of all 14 caucuses just because I want to know what's going on within the party around the state. So it's not just locally to me in my county, but it lets me know what's going on in the state. Sometimes there are things there that don't interest me at my county level, but it helps to keep me plugged into what different communities' needs are and what their interests are on all sorts of different topics. So I am a Spanish speaker, not natively, but I am a Spanish speaker besides speaking English. So I do have that in my background as well. Reach out.
I had a question for all three candidates. There are some very important ballot measures that are going to be, that we're all going to be voting on in a few. And I was shocked to find out one of them is to stop making slavery legal in Oregon. That actually is still in the Constitution. What ballot measures do you feel, each of you feel that voters really need to hone in on? And,
Can I start on that one? I'll let you guys have a little break on this.
we don't have a good history, believe me.
Yeah, I've been really surprised.
Been here a while, you know we don't have a good history.
Right. So measure 112, I believe is the one that you're talking about, William. I've been really surprised in the forums that I've done and the groups that I've met with. I haven't had a single question about any of the measures that are on our ballot so far.
Whoa.
So really quickly, measure 111 is healthcare for all in Oregon. We're just trying to find a way to get that in our constitution. That's what this measure will do. That everybody has the right to health care in the state of Oregon. Measure 112 is to remove slavery from our state's constitution. It's still written in there. And to provide alternative sentencing for crimes, obviously to help avoid putting people in prison that don't belong in prison, to giving them other ways to work in their communities, to work off their sentence, but to be involved in their communities. Measure 113, my favorite that I would like to bring up with my opponent if I ever have an opportunity, is that as state legislators, we can be punished by not showing up for work 10 times unexcused. So at first I was like, oh, great idea. And then somebody said, yeah, but the person that's in charge of keeping track of those unexcused absences is one person. I believe it's the Senate president. So depending on what party they're in, they could use that as a tool against the other party. But overall, I'm in favor of this issue because I think an excused absence is an excused absence. A death in the family or a sick child or a sick family member or something we should all be excused from. But I don't like the fact that certain people in our state legislature walked out during session just to stop things from being voted on. You know, some great attention. And measure 114 is gun safety. I have some issues with some of the details around this measure. I think overall we have to start paying attention to gun safety. I know in Oregon, most all of us, I include myself, gun owners caucus at the state party level, the Democratic Party of Oregon. I'm a member of the gun owners caucus there because I think we have to pay attention to what happens with gun legislation and gun use in the state. So I'm supporting all of these measures personally. I will let you know I'm supporting all these measures on the ballot. Sorry to take all your time, you guys. Today.
Josh, want me to go next?
Sure.
You know, as somebody who was a victim of walkouts in 2020, there were several bills that I was lobbying. I don't know if you remember, but because of the walkouts in 2020, I believe there were 4 bills that were passed total. And you know, the legislative session was a complete waste. Nothing got done. I was there advocating for funding for Oregon Institute of Marine Biology so they could get a new research boat. And they desperately need it because they've outgrown the boat they have, and the boat has outlived its functional lifespan. And so for them to be able to take students out, show them, you know, what it means to be a marine biologist, do research, they needed about $500,000 for a boat. I was helping them lobby it. We were going around the building. We were getting a great response, and there were really no legislators that were opposed to it. But unfortunately, because of the lockout, the bill died. And like I said, there were only 4 bills that were passed that session. And you know, this year we already have I believe 3,400 bills pre-session filed. So if that gives you some idea of the amount of work that didn't get done. And so we all need to realize we pay those legislators salaries. And I hate to say that because it always sounds like, you do what I want, but that's not it. We pay their salaries. They need to show up for work. And we shouldn't be paying people who aren't showing up for work. I know a lot of people say it's the only tool that the minority has, but that's why we have elections. That's why people are supposed to vote. And it's really just a way of thwarting the will of voters by walking out like that. And so I am hopeful that voters think about this and that they realize when legislators don't show up for work, the work doesn't get done. And none of us get paid if we don't show up for work. So we should really think hard about that. That's a bill that's going to get in my session.
I'm unfamiliar with the number, but there is a measure to help open the jail beds.
Yeah.
That
I get
is,
just on.
that's the one that I am most interested in. There's been a huge crime increase here in Bandon. There's limited availability with them being able to go to Coquille. There's limited beds open. They're turning away people. I would like to see any sort of way of funding, being able to open up those beds and help lower the crime rate here in Bandon. There's people that I've never heard of having to lock their doors, lock their cars, turn on lights at night, and keep a neighborhood watch. And this is a first, and it's very scary. I need to have to do it. Guilty of going to the Fast Mart and leaving my car running while I go in. I don't do that anymore either. So that is a measure that I'm passionate about. I defer to Bret too. The measures that he's in support of.
And the measure to which Josh speaks is a local, it's a county measure for you guys. I don't get to vote for that, unfortunately. I don't get to vote for Melissa or Josh because I live in Curry County. But please support our candidates because we've got some really great people here. I need people to work with, Melissa and Josh both. It'll sort of be a hand-me-down from the state representative level, but we will be working together to make our communities better. So if we want good neighborhoods, we're going to have to be good neighbors. We're going to have to get involved.
Please talk to your neighbors and friends about them and encourage them to go to our website to get more information. And they're about creating community, but as they said, they need our help.
And you guys are doing a great job. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you.